Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Wilson, and I'm the Director of Programming and Advocacy with New England Museum Association. And I am joined by my colleagues, Scarlett and Heather. And we're going to hand it right over to our environmental community of practice co-chairs, Paul Fenton and Matt Kirkman. It's all yours.
Thank you. Welcome into the Zoom space, folks. My name is Paul Fenton. I'm Director of Environmental and Outdoor Education at Discovery Museum Acton. And I am just going to introduce our guest for this meeting. Marny Kindness is the exhibition manager at the RISD Museum. She, along with several colleagues, created the RISD Museum's first task force for climate emergency and sustainability in 2021. Marty has presented several times at American Exhibition Organizers conferences on climate action and sustainability. She's passionate about protecting our environment, especially in the museum field. So I will also turn over the mic to Marty. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Jen, and everyone at NEMA. I'm going to do a quick little shout out to Ariane, who is also at RISD, and Annie and Molly. Hi. I miss you guys. I know them from exhibition stuff. So as Paul said, I'm Marny Kindness. I'm exhibition manager at the RISD Museum. I've been at RISD for 21 years, and in 2021, we started our Climate Emergency and Sustainability Task Force Museum. And I know that my colleagues are going to be presenting in a much bigger way on this at the fall conference. So I'm not going to go too in depth on some things, but I did want to share, in our ECOP. It's basically just a preview of what you'll see a little bit later on, and they're going to go much more into it. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. I do slideshow. Can you see that? Okay, hold on. I have to find my notes, which are underneath here now. Can't do both things at once. Okay. Okay. Are we good? You can see this? Okay. Okay, so we specifically wanted to use the word emergency in our climate task force because climate is very urgent. And this is something that we all felt really, really strongly about. And it's not just a green team or a sustainability team. We wanted to make this something that was really, really urgent and something that we could do. A lot of people were able to rally around this. So I'm going to go a little bit into this. So museums and where do we fit in? I also want to say the caveat, I am not a scientist. I am a trained artist. I've been in project management my whole life. I am not a scientist. So I know that some of you on NEMA are, and I would love to hear your thoughts after. But how do museums, especially art museums, fit into this ecosystem? There's a lot of science and natural history museums that are doing this amazing sustainability work. And we wanted to see, why is it so hard for museums to talk about sustainability efforts? As an exhibition manager, I've dedicated my life to a field that creates a lot of waste, especially in temporary exhibitions. And seeing all of that stuff come out of our galleries, we really wanted to do something about it. The role of the museum is to support and enrich the life in this ever-increasing climate change world and the effect on marginalized communities. It's something that we think about. How can we be good stewards of the land we are on in decolonizing and re-indigenizing? And thinking about community sustainability and how can museums function in this ecosystem? So these were some of our guiding questions as we created this task force. And there's two different lists on here. The list at the top is people that in the museum that are currently on the task force. The bottom list are people that have been on the task force previously and rotated off after 1, 2, or 3 years. You can really see the cross section of people. So like once we decided, there was a couple of us that were talking about these things. How it got formed is it's really easy to talk to conservators and installers, registrars, the people that are really doing all of the heavy duty work inside the galleries, especially with moving objects and waste. So we had already been talking about it for years. And when we started to open it up to a broader audience in the museum world, like we wanted to see who else would be really interested in this. And you can see that there's people in marketing, there's people in graphic design, in education, curators, video production, like a whole wide range of people. So obviously this is something that is really important to a lot of our colleagues. So the first thing that we did is we created some high-level goals and action items for ourselves as it guided our practice. You can see here, there's like some of the things we started doing. There's a lot of stuff that's ongoing. We did some action items that we created in 2021, 2022. There's things that are still taking place, but we initially just started with a lot of research. We started connecting with other museums, even some of them on this call. We started doing a lot of information gathering with ourselves, and a lot of this was during the pandemic too, where we had a little bit more time on our hands and a lot of us being around computers, webinars, videos, podcasts, articles. There was a ton of things that we were doing. We would have meetings talking about climate. So what we wanted to do is to create best practices in the Raise to Museum, think about what opportunities we could have, think about education, not just internally, but externally, and what resources are available to us. So prior to year one, we had already been doing some latex glove recycling, LED. I mean, a lot of these things are things that museums are already thinking about. And a lot of this was really low-hanging fruit. We just wanted to create a list of all the things we were doing already up to this point so we could see where we were and where we're going. And so accomplishments so far, you can see that there's a bunch of different types of things that we've done. Everything from like recycling initiatives, energy usage, planning and practice, external programming. All of this stuff is on our website, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, so I'm a very visual person, so I thought everyone would like to see a little bit of visuals about some of the things that we're doing. So in the art museum field, what we're thinking about is we use a lot of foam for packing crates, shipping artwork, things like that. As you know, foam is made of dangerous materials, things like sometimes good, sometimes bad, but things that are necessary for art handling, but go on to have a very long life in the landfill. So we actually found this company in Connecticut. It's a foam recycling company. They come up, whenever they come up to deliver stuff in Providence, they will take away foam that we've already used. We've been doing this for a few years. They usually take the foam and reuse it into other things. They're trying to extend the life. Like when you're thinking about life cycle and products that you're bringing in, things that you're using, you want to think about like, what is the end result of that? Here is in our galleries, there's a lot of materials that we reuse over and over again, whether it's 2x4s, whether it's screws, nails. Our amazing art handlers try to take down and reuse as much as humanly possible whenever we're building things. We can't always reuse the drywall, but we're starting to use the decision-making in our practice to invest in more sustainable items. We're spending a little bit more money, but it's things that we can use over and over again. And this is just a teeny little taste. You'll hear a little bit more about this in November. This is one of our Asian Works on Paper galleries, and some things that we do in the art field, in the art museum world, is creating panels and vinyl and labels and things like that. We have a huge interpretation team, and we want to let the public know what we're doing with our art objects, because that's one of our goals, and for the RISD Museum is interpretation. But we wanted to think about ways where like we were creating these panels and they're made out of plastic, and they would be up for a few months and then they would go into the landfill. So what our graphic designers are doing is taking them down, reprinting over them, like where they're physically bringing them to the print house, they're reprinting over them, and they're putting them back up on the wall. And we've actually created 2 of these. So one of them is always ready to go, and one of them can go to the print house. So it's a very easy swap. We've been doing this for about 4 years now, and they haven't broken down just yet. So we're currently investigating how long we can keep doing this before things do start to break down. But again, the life cycle, we're extending this as long as we can. We've also increased our use of projection in the galleries, not just projection for projection's sake. I mean, obviously knowing that a bulb and a projector also has a carbon footprint, but there were some design aspects and interpretation in galleries where they wanted to have like floor to ceiling vinyl and walls and, you know, all of the stuff and murals. And I was like, this is a lot of plastic that comes down off of this and goes into the landfill. So we started using use of projection to still be able to get those effects without having like a physical piece of thing that could potentially end up in the ocean someday. And we try to be very mindful of what we're doing. We're not doing it all the time. This is in our works on paper department. We try to use really standard sizes of frames and mats. And so we're not constantly buying new frames and mats over and over again for our works on paper, which we have a very huge collection. And that's one of the things that has to rotate in our galleries really often. So we're mindful about the things that we use, and we try to reuse things over and over again. These are just examples of cases and gallery furniture that we've used over the years. And this is a show on Gorham silver that we had in 2019. We had to order these very specific cases because of the chambers underneath to be able to put silica gel to keep the silver on view for really long periods of time. And we didn't want to just get rid of these heavy duty custom cases. So they are scheduled in our exhibitions, like we have them booked out until 2026. So they've had a long life outside of just this exhibition. This exhibition also went on tour to a couple of museums, and the museums that it ended up at, they also ended up keeping some of the cases. So passing on the good vibes, being able to let other museums use some of the things that we've created. So programming, things that we've done for programming is some of the stuff I talked a little about earlier is like we had some lunch and listen podcasts so that we're all sitting around the table, like listening to a podcast, talking about climate. It was during our lunch hour, so it was very informal. There was this organization in Rhode Island. They are now dissolved, which is really sad, but it was Clean Ocean Access. And I brought them into the museum for them to talk about all the ways in which they support the people of Rhode Island and having access to beaches. And they did a lot of advocacy. They ultimately, I think the pandemic hit them really hard and they lost a lot of funding. So unfortunately, they had to dissolve. But it was something that was really eye-opening for us. As being in the museum field, we don't really think about our waterways, but it was something that was very interesting and something to keep in mind as we do our climate planning. We made a relationship with the Tamaquag Museum, which is in Rhode Island, and Silver Moon LaRose over here on the left, who's I think she's the assistant director of the museum, took us on a nature walk, and we did foraging. And so just learning, if you're out in nature and you're learning about all of the ways in which nature, you can use nature, or the way that you respect nature or spirituality, like it was very, very interesting and eye-opening in order for us to just see and be in the world around us, which helps us do our work. We visited with his colleagues at Peabody Essex Museum. This is a climate team that they have. These are my colleagues, but this woman is on the climate team at Peabody Essex. So it was really nice to be able to visit other museums, and because sometimes you're just logging away on the work all the time and you have to get out of what you're doing and talk to other people about it. We had Sarah Nunberg, who works for Stitch. I don't know if people on this call know about Stitch, but it's sustainability tools and cultural heritage. So Sarah came and we did some like roundtable workshops, and a lot of this is like what materials, carbon footprint of materials. They have a database that you can check to see like if I have a choice between these two materials, like which one is better to use than the other one. And it just helps you make informed decisions about that. And so we had a roundtable about things that are really important to us, work that we need to get done inside our own walls. And it was a great way for us to have like a full day of that facilitation, as that also guides our work. Some other programming, because sometimes some of the stuff can be really hard. You'll see some more images later this fall from Ingrid. We had an exhibition, and so this is just me giving tiny little kids a tour of the exhibition, which is really fun for me because I don't typically do that in my day-to-day job. And here's Ingrid, our conservator, who I think might actually be on the call. So things that we did internally for our staff, just to make people aware, is we had Kintsugi. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Ingrid did this concert. Ingrid is an object conservator, and she did this beautiful Kintsugi repairing ceramics workshop for our staff. And so it's a way that just because something gets broken doesn't mean that it doesn't have value anymore. And so thinking about these things and like giving our staff opportunities to be able to do things like that, just to think about how they think about things in their own lives and how, we don't have to have a disposable society. I am also very big into the fiber arts and mending. And so I did a lot of mending workshops. So our staff would bring in some clothes and we would sit during lunch and mend things so that clothing wouldn't go into the landfill and they have a longer life. And here's a cheesy photo of me because I love selfies. And this is us cleaning up a beach in Rhode Island. And so it's a great team building exercise. We had a lot of fun. We cleaned up a lot of trash, which is really gross. When you start doing beach cleanups, you can't unsee it. Like now you just walk down the beach and you're like, oh God, a cigarette butt. So it's a nice way to get out there, especially with families and kids, and be able to protect our beaches for the next generation. And here's just some more Earth Day challenges that we've had over the years. Okay, so accomplishments in 2024. So we really wanted to do some engaging with the public, and we've had different task forces in the RISD Museum do different things similar to this. This was an art in the environment tour that we launched for Earth Day this year. So the sustainability task force went around through our galleries. We found objects that were on view and found different ways to talk about things and give our public almost like a little insight into, like, think about how this material was made, like what was the use of it. This is an object that talks about waterways and now, diminishing natural resources. So we went through and we put this together, and it stays up at our visitor services all the time. So people still come in and do our nature tour, which is really fun. Our cafe, like some of the things that we wanted to do in 2024, this is you guys right here presenting at NEMA. And we also talked to our cafe, and we talked to our cafe. They're working on composting. They already do internal composting, but they're also going to be thinking about how our visitors are composting. I know a lot of other museums are doing it really, really well in this regard. Art museums are a little bit behind in this area, but it's a way that we can improve. I did go to a RISD faculty meeting and gave them a whole presentation on sustainability and what we're doing in the museum, just because RISD is training artists, right? And so like, how are artists thinking about the materials that they're using that will eventually come into our building and to the museum fields, and how we're going to protect and take care of those as we go forward. So like having faculty, a lot of different faculty have been doing amazing work in sustainability, especially at RISD, but it was really great to have the opportunity to talk to them directly about it. RISD Second Life, I'll talk about that in just a little bit. And so some of the things that we've been doing is advocating for longer rotations. And so finding that balance between protecting the artwork, but also keeping out view a little bit longer so we're not creating more and more waste. And advocating for more light sensors in the galleries, which we have in some of them. This is the Second Life Exchange. Not all institutions do this, but it's really helps being part of an academic institution. RISD has this Second Life Exchange, which is they have a person that runs it. It's almost like a little art shop. People can donate materials, paintbrushes, paper, yarn, all different kinds of things. And students can come in and take those and use them. So instead of buying new every single time or using something and then you're like, I don't know what to do with this, like it still has a little bit of life in it. They're using this as a way for students to be able to access and use some of these materials in their art making, which is great because college is expensive and so is art supplies. Here's just a teeny preview of our exhibition that we had about sustainability. So, my colleagues will go deeper into depth in this fall. But the task force, it was the very first time the museum task force was able to do a task force curated show. That's not usually what happens, but we thought about every single thing from start to finish and sustainability in mind when it came to this. Whether it's, some of you might recognize, we reused crates. So we cut a shipping crate down and we took some of the design elements. This was Brendan, our graphic designer, took some of the design elements and used it in this. You'll hear from Brendan this fall, so he will go much more in depth into what we're doing for design and sustainability. But it was really a nice moment where me and my colleagues came together and we were able to holistically talk about climate, use the art to speak about climate. We used it as advocacy and a call to action. It got a lot of attention and a lot of press. There was even a publication in France that picked it up. And I was like, we've gone international. So excited. You'll hear more about that later this fall. And one thing that we wanted to do, museums are not great about doing this, is putting things out there. So we're doing a lot of this internal work and we don't always tell people that we're doing this work. And we also we want to make sure that we're not doing it to be performative, right? So like we spent a lot of time like crafting this climate emergency statement, putting it up on our website. And then if you link to it, like further down below, it lists all of the action items that we've done. So it's not just that we're saying we're doing this stuff, we're showing that we're actually doing this stuff. And there is a email address on there. So if the public has questions, if they want to know what we're doing even further, if they want to know how to partner with us, we give them that email address so they can be in touch. And so just from my perspective in exhibition planning, when we're talking about exhibitions, which is like one of the major things that we do in an art institution, is reinstallations, collections, exhibitions. We want to think about it from the very beginning. And so in addition to like, what are the objects you're thinking about? We also have our anti-racist commitment. We think about accessibility, collections care. I have environment and sustainability built into the very first phase of our exhibition planning. And so while curators and educators don't specifically have to come up with a carbon footprint of the exhibition, we spend a lot of time weaving it into initial steps and making decisions based on that, whether it's you know what, there's too many loans and it's too much carbon footprint. Like we will make decisions of what to cut, what to use, what not to do, what to do. Sometimes it has an impact on our budget. Sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a lot less, which is really great. But it's important to have those conversations early on. And so for my exhibition colleagues out there, this is just a snapshot of my exhibition calendar. The orange is when our shows are up and the blue is the installation times. And so we started moving to longer and longer periods in between our exhibitions, making sure that we don't have all blue happening at the same time. This was something that was happening that is no longer happening because I don't like when it's all blue at the same time. Because we want to make sure we have enough exhibitions on view for the public, but we want to make sure that we can extend the time in between exhibitions so that we're not rushing to quickly get something done and do it really fast and not well. We're thinking about it through a sustainability lens. So we're taking time to do more painting in the galleries instead of vinyl. We're taking more time to slowly build things instead of quickly. And it helps impact our budget as well and our staff. But it's something that we think about. There are things that we can switch out in a day or two, but it's something to be mindful of as we move forward. And so planning for the future, we're always looking for much bigger impact things. We're looking, like, I would love to have solar panels on the roof of every single RISD building. Some of the things that have come up from us, and you might hear a little bit more later this fall from Ingrid, is that there's places in Providence that are not infrastructurally set up to receive the solar. So even if we wanted to put solar panels on our roof, the infrastructure is not there. So advocating to our colleagues at RISD, I mean, the other thing I should mention too is that the museum is just one division of RISD. So we get our energy from the campus. And so there's a lot of things that we can't control in the museum, but it's being able to advocate for the things that we can, control the things that we can, help refining our policies internally for sustainable practices, continue to make connections to RISD and students and faculty and just our community and beyond. And just finding for more ways for us to reduce our carbon footprint. And that's what I have for questions. Second, I think I'm gonna stop sharing, but I can go more. Did I talk for long enough? Was that good? The last time I had to do this presentation for faculty, they're like, you have 5 minutes. And I talked so fast because I was trying to get all the information out there. So I was like, I'm gonna slow it down this time so people can actually hear me and the transcription doesn't look weird. So hopefully that was fine. Anyway, I'm gonna open it up for questions.
I was curious about, thank you so much for sharing about the project and all the initiatives you guys are undertaking. I was so curious about the like re-vinyling of the poster. So it's the same like foam core poster board for the vinyl, and then they like take it to the print house?
It's a plastic Comatex.
Okay.
Yeah, that they're remaking. We have been, and Brendan will talk a little bit about this in November, like we have been investigating other types of material to use. Like we're using, I think, wood in one of the areas. But yeah, it's not foam core, I think might break down after a while, but this one is a plastic Comatex. But we have moved, like we used to have like Sintra and Comatex, which is both plastic, museum labels throughout, and now we've moved to a cardstock, like a more museum board, that at least is able to be recyclable. Robert, your question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious about the latex glove recycling program. Is that something where the folks who recycle it come to RISD to get the gloves, or do you have to bring it to whoever does this?
I think that we ship it. I think it's
Okay.
I think it's TerraCycle. I can get some information and post it in the ECOP, but I think it's through TerraCycle. I know like I've seen like these little bins that have like the little hole and like you use them as much as you can, but then you put them back in and then
Good
you
to know.
ship it
Thank
back.
you.
Yeah.
Marny, you've given a great example of a specific museum and all the things you could do, and particularly to do with sustainability. And I'm curious, you're being very successful at this. Are you looking forward at broadening your scope and maybe having a lecture series or something about not just RISD, but what's going on elsewhere, what the big challenges are, nationally or regionally? I envision a lecture series or something like that that gets into the bigger picture of climate change.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there are a lot of really amazing museums that are doing this work. I've been on a lot of webinars and workshops, not just through AAM and in this country, but globally. There's a lot of museums in Europe that are so far beyond us doing this work. So there is a lot of information out there. I have not thought about being on a lecture panel because I think it scares me a little bit because I'm not really an expert in this area. I'm always happy to talk to my exhibition colleagues throughout the country. So I am an American Exhibition Organizers, which is all of North America. So Canada, US, and Mexico. It's all the nerdy exhibition managers like me that look at schedules and databases and timelines and stuff. And I was on the steering committee for 4 years. And one thing I really pushed for in those 4 years was to have panels on exhibition planning and sustainability. And a lot of people from those panels ended up advocating for climate teams at their own institution, like one of them being the National Gallery, which is amazing. So like if you're out there talking in your own little networks, like you're planting seeds and people are thinking about these things, especially as it's coming more and more apparent into this culture. I mean, like if we don't help fight climate change, like none of this is going to matter. Like art in galleries is not going to matter, right? Anyway, I don't know if that answered your question. So like there are some places, like there are some other local organizations, but there are also some global ones talking about it.
Oh, good, you did. Thank you.
Hi, Annie.
Hey, Marny, good to see you.
Good to see you.
I have a quick observation and then a question. The quick observation is that it's so interesting to me how caring for the environment ends up caring for your staff in the way of like reducing crunch timelines or like 1,000 rotations, or like I find that really fascinating, like how that bleed naturally happens. My question is, what kind of support you're getting at the leadership and board level for this work, and sort of by extension, like how like official or ratified you are, like as a body. Like, do you have like a giant plan on paper, like my planning friend? Like, is there, like, what does that look like?
That's a great question. When we first started the task force in 2021, leadership was very supportive of this. And since then, we have a new director that just started less than a year ago. She is also very, very supportive of this. It's not officially, I want to say ratified. I don't know how that would how that term works out, you know, in this academic institution, but we have goals and guidelines and like things that we need to hit. We don't report to it on the board, but the board does know about it. The board does not ask us, you know, how we're doing and things like that. We do. So this sustainability task force falls under our SEI specialist. So the specialist reports directly to the director. The specialist collects all of the, like we have other task force too. We have like an LGBTQ task force. We have an accessibility task force. Like there's a bunch of different ones that all report up to this SEI specialist. And she does reports to the director and then in turn to the board. Does that answer your question? It's not fully ratified. We're kind of going rogue a little bit at this point, but so far everyone has given us the green light to do things. We have a little bit of a roadmap. We don't have too much of a fully formed roadmap. I mean, like things that we can control, we do. As far as like bigger energy, that's really the college that has roadmaps for those. There is a Office of Strategic Planning on the campus side, and they are looking at all of these things, and that's part of their RISD strategic plan. We also are working on a strategic plan for the museum, and so that is also going to be built into it. But the director of strategic initiatives was at that faculty show, and so the faculty presentation. Oh my God, I'm losing my words today. She came up to me after and she's like, I want to talk to you. I'm like, yeah, you do. Yeah, we need to talk about this. Thicker. Matt.
Hi, thank you. I'm smiling because my question, Annie stole it. I was going to ask you how formalized is your existence and did you have a constitution? And then she throws out the word ratification. So it was like, so I'll just comment that one thing I heard you say is, you know, it was hard to consider yourself an expert because of the dynamism of the materialness of this, you know, like, and I just, for everybody listening here, my experience with that is that really it's very hard for any institution or individual to keep up with the materials and the technology, and that because there's always more to learn, and to keep becoming more aware of all that stuff is basically a full-time job. And what's so significant about what you shared, Marny, is your philosophical underpinning and the institutional body language that your team has put in place. And then, part of that philosophical underpinning and institutional body language is to be explorative and open to to discovering new ways of solving these climate emergencies and sustainability issues. So
Yeah, thank you. I think I mean, we've been really lucky where we've had a lot of flexibility as far as our task force. I mean, I think that like as things come up and we think of ideas, our staff has been really open to it. We also want to make sure that we're not overburdening people and we're not giving people too much to do. We're just hoping that it's something that's considered and woven into some of the work that we're doing. I think it's important to make opportunities of learning and fun when it's like when you're doing this really hard work. So we're trying to like sprinkle a little bit of those things in. Something that you had said, oh, the thing that came about this, and like we had always been thinking about climate and sustainability for so long, but I think it was really during the pandemic when many of us were home and we're sitting at our dining rooms and we're looking out the window and we're watching spring happen in real time. And then we're on Zooms with our colleagues, and I'm like, oh my God, like the nest is hatching now. Like there's like these amazing things that you get to see that we sometimes just pass us by because we're so busy and we're just like, I got to get on to the next deadline. So there was this really beautiful moment that allowed some of us to be able to experience those things. And when everything was shut down and we couldn't go indoors, being out into nature and thinking about that. There was also this, watched a lot of Netflix during the pandemic. So this David Attenborough video, which was extremely sobering, but also very hopeful. And someone who had seen climate in his many, many decades on this earth of like it changing so drastically and seeing what was happening with man-made um, operations, which is really sobering. I think that it's important to, continue to think about those things. It can't be all fun all the time because sometimes you just want to like scream in the streets, right? And go like, go to the polls, like go talk to your advocates, go to the state house. Like there's certain things that we can be doing as museum colleagues, as, humans in these communities, things that are really important to us, things that we want to, pass on to our kids. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of thank you for your question, your comment. I appreciate that.
Marty, I was gonna say basically the exact same thing that Matt did, and would respectfully ask you to reconsider whether or not you're an expert here. But I think enough said on that. But I did have a question, which was, there was something on one of your slides about like a digital unsubscribe-a-thon or something.
Oh, yeah.
Can you, tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about
this
that?
is the part where I usually ask people to take out their phones and unsubscribe from emails. I don't know about you, but the avalanche of emails that come to me right before Thanksgiving, right? Like right before like holiday time and stuff like that. There are so many things. And so everything is like all of that email, all of that is a digital footprint, right? And so like we're consuming information at such a rapid rate and in different ways. And I think about ways in which we can clean up our inboxes, ways in which we can clean up our brains a little bit. There's so many, like let's just say like you go to Land's End one time and like you're on their email list forever. And sometimes you need that coupon code, right? But also like you don't need emails from them for the rest of your life. So what I try to do with my staff is we carve out a little bit of time and we jump on a Zoom and we have coffee and we just go unsubscribe from things to clean up our inboxes every once in a while. We also think about, right? Like it's just too much. Like there's too many emails. Like you're gonna miss something important, right? Like somebody's wedding. I don't know. But I also think about the files that we carry. And so in the museum world, I don't know if some of you are like that, like we're very fancy hoarders, right? Like we love to collect stuff. We have to keep archival things all the time, but do we need 50 copies of those? No. And so we do have a whole digital team where we think about what we're keeping, what we can let go of, just making sure that things are, you know, archival in the right places. But we don't have to keep 50,000 versions of the same thing over and over again. And so cleaning up, you know, our digital in that way, we are, what's it, fancy hoarders? Um, we we do have, because we made a point in our accessibility team to put all of our objects in our collection accessible on our website. So we have over 100,000 objects in our collection, which is enormous for such a teeny tiny institution. That takes up an enormous carbon footprint digitally on our database, on servers, on the website, because they're all photos. And we wanted to make sure that people could see those all around the world. And I think when you start to look at digital carbon footprint, like there's this website you can go to and it tells you like how dirty your website is. And that just means how much energy it's using. And ours is not great. It's not great. But there's really no way of getting around that right now. But there are, and Brendan might talk to you later on in November about this, but like our graphic designers are thinking about ways in which we can make design more sustainable. Anyway, unsubscribe from stuff that you don't need. Go out for a nature walk instead of buying some pants, right?
I'm hoping you're gonna host the snack break where you're just gonna sit with everybody at conference as we like unsubscribe from everything.
Here's the sad thing. I'm not going to be at the conference this fall, which makes me super sad because it's the exact same week that I'm at my American Exhibition Organizers Conference where I'm talking about sustainability to that crew. So, but maybe in the future there will be a different week.
Manchester 2025.
Okay, writing it down on my calendar right now. I would love to host a snack break where we do that. That'd be amazing. I can also deputize one of you to do it too.
I was gonna say, I think we could probably figure something out. And what's interesting, yeah, there
Jen
we go.
says
We got
yes.
Jen's on board.
I was going to say the same thing.
But what's really interesting, Marty, about, you know, I've never until this moment made the connection between emails and like spam emails and the environment. And I think that I've thought about this in certain areas, but I think this is kind of like a new thing for people to think about. Like I think many of us that have been tapped into the sustainability and climate conversation for a while, like we have a lot of the same conversations, but this like I remember encountering it. I'm a bit of a music nerd, and I remember encountering this like argument about whether digital music, streaming music, or vinyl was more sustainable, and there wasn't really an answer, right? And I'm not gonna say like what I think, but like I just think the point of like considering we think of the internet as like this, but it like it's a real server somewhere. It's a real computer using actual energy. It's a lot of right. And like I'm like familiar with that from like certain conversations, but not like, I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for making that connection for me and hopefully some of the other folks in the Zoom room.
I mean, I'm not getting rid of my Spotify because I also like to listen to music.
And
It's something
I'm
to
not
think
either.
about, right? Like something to think about, right? Other questions?
Yes. So
Oh, sorry,
I'm at a very small institution. We have 2 and a third staff, right? We have the third is actually our preparator. So she just comes for those gray times or the blue times on your schedule, right? She comes for those, and then we don't see her for 6 weeks. And I guess I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about things that you think might be scalable, or I guess for me, I really appreciate this group. Like we're a museum about a place that's really like changing rapidly because of our warming climate. So the White Mountains are not going to be white, right? Well, we'll still have the quartz, but we won't have the snow. So we're like trying really hard to kind of by we, I actually mean I am trying really hard to make this like a core piece of what we're doing. But at the same time, I just like, I don't know, it's all a lot. Like you're doing a ton
a
of
lot.
work and there's a lot of you, and it still feels like a lot of work. So I'm wondering if there are either like things you think that could be done on a small scale, or things you think that you have found where you've found success where there was like a light lift and a big impact.
Yeah, basically, that's a great question. And something that we think about too, because even though we're a staff of about 100 or less, I think of us as really tiny, but we're not 2.5 people. So I have to
Two and a
remember
third.
two and a third. Okay, yeah, I have to remember that like we still have our resources. There are some really easy, low-hanging fruit of things that we can do. The first thing that we did is we just took a survey of everything that we were already doing, not just sustainability-wise, but the work that we were doing. And then we started to look for ways in which we could change that work, right? So if let's just say we're driving to offsite storage to pick up something to go out on loan, we would start to look ahead to see, even though we don't have a ton of space to do this, like what are some things that are coming over the next couple of months that we could do all at the same time? Like, so just trying to find really small ways to like piggyback things on one another, or for something that we did that was really low hanging fruit is we would try to design our rotating galleries a few exhibitions ahead and then pick one paint color that was a shared color. Okay, I don't know if you've worked with curators before, but they are not super cool about that. This recording is not going to go on TikTok, right? Don't send it out. It's just for us. But like sometimes they're not super cool with that, right? And so, but if you frame it through the lens of like sustainability, it doesn't always have to be gray all the time. It could be something that like the wall is in the same place for the next couple exhibitions. These are really small ways which, like we're still going to paint the walls, we're still going to, put things up, we're still going to have cases, we're still going to have walls, but if they could look kind of the same, but maybe graphics in a different way and the art is a little bit different, like that could be something that extends the life a little bit longer, that sort of thing.
Also, I think about, Marny, what you said on your slide too, around like energy audit of like LED lights or kind of those lower hanging fruit things for smaller institution friends, could be helpful too.
Yeah, I can also post. I mean, like everything's on our website, but like, so if you go to the RIS Museum website under who we are, there's a whole list of things that we've done already. A lot of that stuff is stuff we did really early on. And so it looks like a lot, but it was really low hanging fruit. Like you get to 2024 and it's like 4 things because it's much harder and longer and more money. But I can post a list of some ideas of things, and I'm always happy to chat anytime to brainstorm some ways that you can think about that in a staff of 2.3. What is it? 2.3?
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate that. Thanks. Oh, and I wanted to say so one of the things that we are doing is that we've gotten a technical assistance grant from the Frankenthaler Climate Initiative, which I hope you all know about. And so that's one where I'm leaning pretty heavily on my physical plant. That's the nice part about being an academic museum, is that we have a physical plant and I don't have to know how any of those things work. But that's been a great opportunity for us also to raise the profile of what we're trying to do across campus, because at a state institution in New Hampshire that's 50th out of 50 for funding higher education, the president really likes it when I get grants. So it's like two good things. One, we're doing things that I think are important, and two, the president thinks it's good because I'm bringing money in to do things that look good. So it all,
yeah, they like that.
Again,
they like money.
this recording isn't leaving this group, I hope. So, things that maybe are a little unfiltered. Our air conditioning isn't working and it's like 78 degrees in my office. So, I'm also just like the end of the day and I'm not, maybe my filter's given up, but
that's okay. We're all in this together. We are all in this together. We have to be really brutally honest.
Yeah. Trying to kind of make my priorities and the campus's priorities line up is an endless process. project.
I know, it's definitely a challenge, but I want to say congratulations on the Frankenthaler Climate Initiative grant. First of all, that's amazing. Congratulations. And that's really a heavy lift. Like we haven't even started looking at, I mean, like I keep asking our grants manager and our team to be looking at ways in which we can do this, but the thought of like creating something like that to apply for that grant is such a huge project. So congratulations. We haven't done it yet.
Well, thanks. Well, put in our first report for March 31st, and it took us like 3 tries to get the facilities guys to send me the right thing. So, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, making sure that you're friends with facilities guys is definitely important. I think having conversations like early and often in other presentations that I've done, I try to be like a little climate influencer, right? And like the way where I'm not getting free stuff, but I'm like sharing some ideas with other people. So just having those conversations with the people that are making these decisions that can have real impact, even if they don't want to hear it, just the continuing conversations I think is super important. So good job. Other questions?
Looks like we have time for 1 or 2 more if folks have any.
I was just looking at the chat. Annie, yes, it was The Life on Our Planet. If you want to watch it with a glass of sustainably sourced wine, I guess. Always a good idea. Yeah, so you'll hear a lot more from my colleagues later this fall. If you're going to go to the conference, they have a really great presentation that they're working on. They tried to get me to go to this really hard, but I'm already going to be in Denver, so I'm sad to miss it. But these are experts in their field, so you're going to have some really great material to go for. So I would really suggest going to that session.
And their session is actually one of our very first at conference. It's Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. So it's a big kickoff for us in a way. So
Coffee and climate.
There we go. So I think it'll be really fun. But it's a great way to start off the 3 days at conference. So if anybody's interested, Scarlett was great and just posted a link to our conference site.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Marny. I really appreciate having you. And I'm just going to put a link to a very, very quick survey in the chat if folks would like to fill that out. I promise it only takes about a minute. Thanks everyone for joining us for another meeting of the ECOP. Appreciate it.
Email me anytime. Seriously, I will delete your email immediately after I read it because of the carbon footprint, but I will get back to you. I will get back to you.
Paul, since you started the conversation with the folks from the Botanic Garden, you want to say something about that regarding next month?
I can, except that I don't totally remember the details of their project, but do join us next month, October the 3rd. We'll be joined by the Indigo Arts Alliance and the
Maine
Coastal Maine
Botanic,
Botanic
yeah,
Garden.
exactly. Coastal Maine Botanic Garden. It's a mouthful.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
collaborated.
No worries. And they'll be talking about a project related to climate and the environment, which I cannot remember the details of in the moment.
Stay tuned for more on that, is the message. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.